Hey, IMB, you ready? So this is what they've been waiting on. Yeah.
ShineHard family, Shine Squad. I'm happy to be here with my man Jeff Tribble. He is the founder and CEO of MusicianShip. He's a DC Innovator, and we're very happy to have him to find out more about his passions, his struggles, his adversities, and all the amazing things he has planned for 2016 and beyond. He also was featured by Black Enterprise as their modern man, so that was a really cool feature that we saw he got recently. So Jeff, happy to be here, man. How are you?
Man, I cannot complain. Really excited to be here with you and to share more with your guests, man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for having me.
No doubt, man. So let's just dive right into it. It's always very fascinating to me when I talk to successful and talented individuals to really find out where their journey began. So I want to ask you, tell me about your childhood and what growing up was like for you.
I grew up on the south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
Whenever people think about the south side of Chicago, they always get like this kind of negative connotation.
Like it's rough, like it's just...
Yeah. I was really blessed to have grown up in a good home, but like even growing up in a place like Chicago in a good home, there's not enough spatial distance or socioeconomic distance to like have you where you're not a part of the craziness too.
Right.
Like so like whereas in some communities being middle class or upper middle class even like can get you away from that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In Chicago it really can't. So I was able to like surface or emerge from that environment as a result of my involvement in music.
Yeah.
I got a music scholarship to go to college and had a blast there. I was the section leader of Howard's Drumline at Howard for 3 of my 4 years there. When I was in my second year at GW for law school, just felt compelled to start the musicianship and kind of help young people who were similarly situated in those urban environments.
Right. So did you have siblings growing up?
Only child, which kind of plays into my interest in being kind of alone.
Yeah, I'm only child too.
Yeah. It was a challenge kind of growing up, but like in retrospect, it really allowed me the latitude to like get a lot done when I'm alone and not feel like I need to be around people. So
yeah, I think a big part of entrepreneurship is the courage to do things alone, and I think being an only child really equips us to be better entrepreneurs. But who did you look up to as a kid?
My father, Michael Jordan too, growing up in the city, which is interesting too, like as we talk about just success and giving back. My affinity for Michael Jordan is beginning to wane a little bit just because as I look at his community service or lack thereof and how, there's just a lot of kids in these urban environments and major metropolitan cities all across the country, the world even, who like buy his shoes and he's not as actively engaged in the community as I would think that he would want to be, given his impact, given his voice, given all that he's done to uplift, from my perspective.
He's inspired us with his game.
He's inspired us with his game and his accomplishments, but like, what else, bro? So,
what's next? You're making $1 billion a year off shoes, but like, how is that translating back?
Right.
Yeah, I get that completely. So your dad, what does your dad do?
Yeah, he's a seminary professor, actually, engineer by trade. So just being able to look up to someone with a high level of character, who's a family man, and I aspire to be a family man, but also who's, very intelligent and got it done like on the professional side as well. Just that duality of life successes, I think, was really attractive to me.
Absolutely. So tell me more about your journey to DC. You went to Howard U and GW, for grad, for law school, and then you started the musicianship. So tell me about that organization and what the mission of musicianship really is.
Yeah, so the musicianship is a nonprofit organization, as you stated, that facilitates music lessons, experiences, and opportunities for primarily at-risk youth. We do that through after-school programs, summer programs. It was really exciting about our journeys that we grew from 2 students in our very first year. I was the musicianship's very first instructor as a drummer.
You played the drums.
I played the drums.
Did you have any drummers you looked up to as a kid?
Yeah, as a kid and currently, right?
Okay.
I mean, I'm nowhere near as good as like, you know, the Aaron Spears of the world and the Dennis Chambers of the world and things like that. So those are people who definitely have inspired me musically. And you know, to be able to full circle, like, as they've given their gifts to the world, like for me to kind of just bring that inspiration full circle and give my gifts, the few gifts that I have to the world also is a really dope feeling. And this year we'll work with close to 400 kids. So we've grown tremendously over the last
So you guys
year.
focus primarily on the youth?
Yep, solely.
Okay, solely on the youth.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So how are you guys able to find volunteers or teachers to be a part of the organization?
Yeah, we have a varied network of supporters. We've garnered their support in a variety of different ways, from personal relationships. I mean, I had the great pleasure of being in Howard's marching band, which naturally connects you to hundreds of musicians, you know, while they're at Howard. So kind of coming out, even though I was a few years outside of my tenure at Howard, I still had a lot of those same relationships and being able to kind of dip back into that network. So we have a lot of people from the Howard community that have been supportive of the musicianship. But you know, as we've grown, people have just kind of reached out to us and have wanted to be a part of our mission, which is to change lives with music.
Right.
One other thing that's kind of unique to our organization is our relationship with these industry successful musicians who we call our ambassadors.
Right.
And really, we've garnered those relationships through board members. One of our founding board members was the former drummer for Whitney Houston, like while she was at the height of her career. So he has a lot of those relationships. And
from the bodyguard years and all
man, doing those years, yeah, man. Rest in peace to Whitney. Sometimes, I know this is really off script, but I think about like Whitney regularly, as do I Michael Jackson. Man, just because as a musician, they've had a matchless impact on the music community. And it's not something that you can duplicate. No one else will ever be able to duplicate what they did for the industry, but also the way that they make us feel.
Right.
And I just think about that impact and how they've just uplifted the music community. And you know, as someone who's a huge like super fan of music, just generally, like naturally, I just think about like our progenitors in this space, like people who have contributed and have since gone. But man, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of music as well, so I identify with the inspiration of doing anything that you love. When you pursue your passion or you do what you love, that just naturally inspires other people. It doesn't really matter what it is. And that's the amazing thing about like just being true to who you are. I feel like those global musicians or icons really were just true to who they were and just, you know, it transcended. But you talked a little bit about your time with law school. So are you doing anything with law?
Yeah. So full time, I draft, review, negotiate contracts for an Inc. 500 company called Microsystems Automation Group. Okay. What's really interesting is that I backed my way into that position as a result of my work with the musicianship. Like, I got my job that I've had for the last 4 years because the owner of the company is on the board of the musicianship. And they got, you know, a multi-million-dollar government contract, and they were like, man, we know how well you write, we know how well you interact with other people, we need people to review these contracts, like, will you work with us? Like, can you start tomorrow? And at that time, you know, I had literally, man, less than $150 in my bank account, didn't know how I was gonna pay my rent. I was unemployed at that point for maybe 8 months, and it was a no-brainer, and they've since afforded me the flexibility to kind of like do both concurrently. They support the musicianship, and it's a blessing. Yeah, the power of relationships is a beautiful thing. Man, tell me about it. So how do you balance those two? Like, what's your typical day like? So I've been pushing myself to get up at 5:45 each morning. Although if I get up at like 6, it's still a good day. But man, honestly, man, the 15 minutes difference is a huge difference in terms of like commute time and what I can get done, you know, versus answering 3 or 4 emails versus, you know, coming in, work, and kind of on your heels and having to do stuff that people need you to do. But also my job is flexible in the sense that because I'm pretty much just exchanging documents and rarely have to have face-to-face interaction with people, I can travel, I can work from home, I work remotely, probably 2 to 3 days each week. That's a blessing. It's definitely a blessing, definitely a blessing. But as far as the workload, man, it's constant. It's just, you know, some days work will be real heavy, or the musicianship will be real heavy.
Right.
Sometimes the two clash, and those are the most challenging days. But that rarely happens, just because, again, my full-time job doesn't require me to be there like all the time.
Right.
It's a good situation.
No, that's a great situation, man.
Yeah.
So that kind of takes me to a point where I see you're up early, you're active, and I think one common factor with successful people is that they're intensely action-oriented people, and I think action comes from passion. So I want to ask you, what would you say is your passion, and when did you know?
Good question. At this point, 2 or 3 years old. Both of my parents are musicians. It was
Really?
something that I started playing in church at 7.
Oh yeah.
So it's always kind of just been instilled. I want a life that's rooted in music. Like, once I realized I wasn't gonna make it to the NBA, I was like, I want a life that's rooted in music. I kind of changed paths in college. I went in as a radio, TV, film major, actually, because I was like, man, if I can't be in the NBA, I want to be like an NBA cameraman.
Right, I want to be a part of the game.
I'm gonna be a part of the game, like in some other way. And then I was like, maybe I want to be an entertainment lawyer, which kind of like steered me towards the law direction. But you know, in my second year, I really felt like I wanted to still be a social engineer in the same way that a lawyer is, but something that really kind of captivated me. So I would say that's the second passion, just like wanting to help people. And the third passion is probably just travel, being able to get out every now and then and see different parts.
If we see your Instagram, we know it's like travel noir, personalized all over the world, man.
It's a blessing, man. It's a blessing, and I kind of backed my way into that, like really as a result of my work with the musicianship. My first, other than like Canada and like some islands and stuff like that, my first trip across the pond was to London back in 2009, and I said to myself, man, this is dope. Like, I have to do this at least once every other year. Yeah. And then since then, I've done it like every year.
What was your most memorable experience from your travels?
I have a lot. I just have so many. I mean, memorable from the good. German Shepherd in German. And learn along the way and experience things that you wouldn't otherwise experience. It's just, nothing better than that.
Absolutely. I think travel is so inspiring. I like to travel. I haven't quite been international as much as I'd like to, but just my travels domestically have inspired me to keep going and expanded my mind.
Dope.
You know, things
successful. It's the consistency. Yeah.
Consumers, right? We're all consumers to a certain extent.
And that just takes a certain focus, a certain grit, a certain determination, a certain level of stick-to-itiveness that just requires consistency.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What inspires you to succeed?
At different points in my life, different things. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, I don't think I'm uniquely different from anyone else or anyone in urban. At least like someone who had a full-time job but who was also like an entrepreneur concurrently.
Right.
So it kind of gave me a blueprint and a model. And at that time, of course, I didn't know that like 2 years later I would be doing something very similar.
Right.
And then, you know, I have been thinking about other businesses that I might want to start.
Right.
And one of my other mentors...
Serial entrepreneur alert.
Serial entrepreneur alert, right. And I've already kind of been like working with something, but I found out very recently that after doing a patentability search that it's not patentable, which just kind of put me in a place where it's like, okay, like let me stop, think about something. Is this something that this path, do I want to like endeavor down any further? Yeah, definitely can't talk about that. I don't know if I want to.
Why you bring it up? You ain't gonna tell us.
Well, because there's a broader like point to it. My mentor, he was like, Jeff, man, I poured $700,000 into a business and it was a dud. So it just like let me know that it's possible to pour a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy into a project, a business or something and still fall short, but still like be successful. And my mentor still lives out in a dope crib, mansion out in, you know, Maryland, and he's still doing extraordinarily well.
Right. Well, I guess 700,000 is relative to what you're actually making or what you have.
Right.
You know, to some people it could seem like a life savings. To some it might be like, well, try again tomorrow or something else.
Right. But that was inspiring to me.
That's very interesting. So the leaders that we have in our generation with social media, there's a lot of things going on in the news and on social media. I want to ask you, what would you say frustrates you the most about today's culture?
As it relates to social media or?
Social media or just things that are in the news, current events.
Yeah. So I see those things as being not mutually exclusive, but I can go two different ways with that. I mean, when I think about social media, I think about how it's a tool that's useful for people like ourselves who are wanting to get a message out or make a difference or inspire people or business owners, things of that nature. But I also think about how it feeds our self-defeating mentalities, particularly for young people. Man, I can't imagine, like, and there are moments where I'm still insecure about different things, right? I don't think that's unique, but I'm thinking about our young people and how they go home at night, they get their cell phones, they might be under their covers, and they're looking at their peers with their best photos and this achievement and that achievement, and that's their measuring stick, you know, whereas you and I, we went to school and like, yeah, they might have joined on our shoes and we joined in their shoes back, and that was kind of like the barometer by which we interacted with one another. It was face to face, but now it's just really tough, I think, to hold yourself to that standard, right? You know, and I don't think it's an appropriate standard, particularly for young people. So I just kind of
that comparing factor, I guess.
Yeah, that comparing factor is really, really detrimental, especially to young people, I think, and sometimes to ourselves as well.
Yeah. What would you say is the makeup of your success? I know I look at myself and I really feel like I'm a very determined person. I've always been a leader in every group of my friends as I've gone through. I look at myself and I understand kind of who I am at 30 years old. And you have a birthday coming up next week too.
2 weeks.
Yeah, you'll be what, 30?
Be 30.
Ooh!
Yeah.
Hey, but hang out in the 20s as long as you can.
Man, appreciate it. It's an interesting feeling, but I'm at peace with it. I'm excited.
Yeah, you gotta be at peace. I mean, when you're doing what you want to do, time is really not as big a factor as people make it seem.
Yeah.
But I guess I wanted to ask you, what would you say is the #1 attribute to your success as a person, as a young black man?
I wouldn't say that there's one. I would say there's at least 3. One, my faith.
Okay.
It just, you know, informs my decision making. Wanting, I ain't perfect. I'm far from perfect, but to aspire to be a person of high character, to aspire to want to do right by people, to have a being that you're responsible to, and it's not your, you know, it's not the people walking this earth. Like you're responsible to someone else.
Right.
So like that is definitely a contributing factor. Also, support that I've received from my family, friends, everyone who I've come into contact with throughout my involvement with the musicianship or whatever else I've been doing, whether it's going to college, whether it's going to law school, etc. Things that I've done outside of the educational and professional sphere.
Right.
And then hard work. Like, there's no substitute for hard work. I didn't make that up. I don't know who did, but whoever did, thank you, because it's really, it's true. Like, you just can't get around that.
That's real. That's very real. So, what would you say is your end goal professionally?
Serial entrepreneurship.
For yourself?
For myself, that may or may not happen now. With the new business idea, kind of still waiting in the wings, but we'll see what happens with it. But yeah, of course, continuing to grow the musicianship. It's nothing better for me personally than to be involved with music and to be helping people. And like being able to marry those two passions into this kind of gumbo of goodness is just like fantastic for me.
So I guess to kind of conclude the questions, it would be, people are going to look at this interview and they're going to understand that you're a law student and that you're the CEO of a nonprofit and you have a day job and you have a passion, right? So what advice do you have for young people that want to leave their day job and turn their passion into profit? How do they do that?
I haven't left my full-time day job, so maybe I'm not the best person to answer this question. But since we're talking about being able to make a living from and this is not something I would ordinarily just talk about, but like, I didn't make any money from the musicianship until 2 years ago. So really you need to ask yourself, how passionate are you about it? Can you pour yourself into something for 4 or 5 years without any financial return on your investment? If you can, and you have an idea that's good enough for it to be sustainable over a prolonged period of time, then you've found something special. And if you are blessed enough to be able to do both your full-time job and run your business simultaneously, then you found the sweet spot. And you may or may not want to transition, because if things are good on both ends and you're a hard worker, like why sacrifice the income on the full-time job
Right.
side. But if you, you know, kind of hate your job, or
Yeah.
you know, I wouldn't say hate your job, but
Yeah.
aren't as fulfilled. Yeah, a lot of people do. If you aren't as fulfilled with your full-time job,
Yeah.
and you want to pursue full-time entrepreneurship, that's really just a question of whether or not you're financially ready. And the way my student loan's set up, I'm like, man, let's ride this wave as long as we can.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I hear you, man. So I want to thank Jeff for being here with us. We're very, very excited to have him as a part of the ShineHard family, getting him as a speaker on our panels. If you guys want to check him out, Jeff, please tell everyone how they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Jeff Tribble on Instagram and Twitter, and Jeffrey L. Tribble Jr. on Facebook. So.
Cool. Well, that concludes the interview, man. Jeff, thanks for being here.
Smiling like I think it's funny. This is how I feel when you've been making money. Damn, this that 88 degree and kinda sunny. This that bend your knees and bob your head real ugly. Whoa, this is how I feel when you've been winning something. This is how I feel when competition mumbling. This that man, we up now, we just came from nothing. This that oh my